Hey guys, tonight we are heading deep into the wooden halls, paper-strewn desks, and ink-smudged robes of ancient China's scholarly underworld, where survival doesn't depend on your swordsmanship, but on how well you can grind an inkstone before breakfast. Welcome to the life of a government scribe, circa somewhere between the Tang and Ming dynasties, when writing beautifully was a matter of national pride and daily exhaustion. You wake before the roosters, long before the sun even considers showing up. The air is damp and chilled, the kind that clings to your skin and reminds you that you're in a room built before insulation was a thing. You are curled awkwardly on a bamboo mat in your shared quarters, surrounded by other scribes in training. Everyone's breath fogs gently into the air. The fire from last night is little more than a pile of resentful embers. Stretch, yawn, regret everything. Your back cracks like ancient lacquerware, and your hands already ache from a night of dreaming about brush strokes. That's right. Your dreams have turned into practice drills. This is your life now. Your blanket smells faintly of tea leaves and despair. You pull it tighter for a moment, trying to hang on to sleep. But somewhere down the hall, a bell chimes. One of those soft, ceremonial ones, all gentle metal and implied judgment. Time to rise. Not because you're excited, but because someone senior will definitely lecture you on lateness as a moral failing if you're not in the corridor in the next 10 seconds. You fumble for your robe. It's stiff from yesterday's humidity and still smells faintly of camphor. You consider pretending to be ill, but then remember that unwell scribes are still expected to attend morning ink rituals unless they've fainted into the rice vat. You make your way down the corridor in your soft cloth shoes, the wood cold and creaking underfoot. Outside, the sky is a soft lavender, and the courtyard is cloaked in mist. A few other scribes are already awake, seated in the meditation garden, staring at their palms like their destiny is written in calluses. You join the line for morning tea, earthy, bitter. No sugar allowed unless your family has very specific connections. It burns your tongue just enough to make your teeth hurt. Welcome to alertness. Your first task is to prepare your ink. You step up to the shared inkstone like it's a sacred altar, because in this world, it is. You pick up the solid stick of ink, a combination of soot, pine resin, and what might be wizardry, and begin grinding it in a circular motion with water. Always clockwise. Always with intention. Always while half listening to your elders quoting Confucius. One of them glances over and says, "That's too fast. The brush will rebel." You nod solemnly, like you understand. You don't. You keep grinding anyway. The ink, when done right, should be smooth, deep black, and slightly viscous. Yours looks like it's unsure of its identity, but it's acceptable enough not to attract more comments, so you bow slightly and step back. You return to your corner desk, a narrow space against a window that doesn't open. There are already 3 sheets of bamboo paper laid out, the fibers so fine they ripple when you exhale too hard. You select a brush from the bundle tied with red string. It's squirrel hair, or goat, or, if you believe the whispers, a blend involving mythical moon rabbits. The handle is carved wood, smooth from generations of hands. You dip it in your ink, and this is where it starts. Each character must be placed with exact pressure, stroke order, and grace. You are not just writing. You are breathing life into symbols that hold meaning, law, ritual, And let's be honest. Bureaucracy. But beautiful bureaucracy. Today's assignment is simple on paper. Copy the seasonal edict about rice taxation ratios for provincial records. You manage 2 lines before your wrist cramps. By the 4th line, your brush stutters. A character meant to mean peaceful harvest now possibly reads angry duck. You sigh. Outside, the sun climbs. You can hear chickens. A cart rattles by on the road. Someone in the distance plays a flute very badly. You envy them. Your instructor glides by like a silk ghost and glances at your work. He raises an eyebrow so gently you almost miss it, then walks away. The shame is real, but also oddly motivating. You start again and again. Historians still argue whether scribes in ancient China held more power than they appeared to, whether their role as silent archivists gave them subtle influence over law, trade, and royal decisions. What's certain is they never had a chance to be bored, or still, or warm. Your day has only begun, and already you've had a minor identity crisis, spiritual ink failure, and a tea-induced stomach rumble. And that's just the first hour. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, if you're listening somewhere far away, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because in the life of a Chinese scribe, survival isn't about brute strength. It's about calm fingers, good posture, and knowing when to bow deeply enough to avoid extra assignments. And you, my friend, are already late to scroll review. You shuffle down the hallway with your half-dry inkstone tucked under one arm, and your paper bundle clutched to your chest like it's a loaf of bread, and you're in a famine. The corridor smells faintly of pine oil and despair. You pass a fellow scribe who offers you a sympathetic nod, the kind that says, "I also once smeared a tribute edict and feared exile." Today is not a rest day. There are no rest days, only slightly different intensities of being told to sit straighter. Your feet carry you across the stone courtyard, slick with dew. Mist lingers like gossip. You reach the outer room of the main hall, a long, echoing chamber with timber beams carved to look like dragons and phoenixes who've had just about enough of this nonsense. Their eyes follow you with disapproval as you bow at the threshold. A senior scribe waves you forward, and you're sent to your assigned workbench. It's positioned under a window with gorgeous morning light that somehow never lands on your paper evenly. A mild inconvenience. But in this job, every inconvenience feels personal. You set down your tools, inkstone to the right, brush rest in the center, water dish balanced precariously on a chipped tile. The water ripples every time someone coughs across the room, which is often. There's a brief silence before the ritual begins. Brushes are unrolled from their silk sleeves, like revered pets. Each one with its own name, probably. Your neighbor has one called Whispering Orchid, because of course he does. You've named yours the one that leaks. You test your brush on a scrap, drawing a few simple characters. They're okay. Not great. The vertical strokes lean like drunk guards. But they'll do for now. Then, the instructor speaks. "Today," he says, "we transcribe the autumn ledger for grain collection from the southern provinces." There's a collective groan, though it's all internal. Outwardly, everyone bows, You receive your template scroll, roughly the size of a laundry sheet, filled edge to edge with characters so sharp and elegant they look like they've been carved into moonlight. Your job is to copy them perfectly, without rushing, without smudging, without weeping visibly. You begin. Each stroke requires thought. Lift, press, pause, flick. A meditative dance performed with hair and soot. But one missed breath, one sneeze, and the whole rhythm shatters. By the third line, your hand aches. By the fifth, your knee twitches. By the seventh, you hate every letter of every word. Still, you press on. The man beside you murmurs a poem under his breath as he writes, which would be charming if he didn't do it in a breathy falsetto. You try to tune him out, focusing instead on the texture of the paper, the cool weight of the ink, the sound of your brush whispering secrets to the parchment. And just when you hit your rhythm smack, your brush splashes. A drop of ink blooms right in the middle of the word for tribute grain, transforming it into something that might mean cow slipper. You blink. You try to fix it. You fail. Your scroll now carries a cow-themed curse. You discreetly roll the paper and tuck it beneath the desk. You'll burn it later. You start over. Again. Historians still argue whether scribes were considered elite scholars or glorified servants. The truth, it seems, depends on who was doing the asking, and how well the scribe in question could hide their smudges. The instructor circles. His soft shoes make no noise, but his presence is thunderous. He stops behind you, breathing just loudly enough to ruin your next stroke. You freeze. He hums. Then he walks on. You exhale. The ink dries. Barely. Then the bell rings. Mid-morning break. 10 minutes of not writing. Not enough to rest. Just enough to realize how tired you are. You shuffle to the side hall, where a pot of hot water steams gently, and a small basket of pickled radishes waits, already half gone. You grab one. It's sour enough to erase memory. You grab another. Rough scroll? A fellow scribe asks. Cow slipper? You reply. He nods solemnly. We've all been there. You trade stories about brush brands and the mystery of inkstones that seem to prefer other people. Someone says their brush worked perfectly until they used it on royal script, and now it won't stop skipping. Another claims to have seen a scribe copy an entire edict with his left hand after injuring the right during a scroll chase. Nobody knows what a scroll chase is. No one asks. A gong rings. Break is over. You return to your seat, swallow your sigh, and pick up your brush. You start again, and again. The sunlight has shifted now, casting long bars of gold across the floor. They look like prison bars. You consider the metaphor, then dismiss it. Too dramatic. This isn't prison. It's worse. It's paperwork. Your character spacing improves. Your wrist steadies. By the end of the session, you've managed half a scroll with only 2 ink spots, and a smudge shaped like a startled duck. Your instructor inspects it, grunts something that might be passable, and moves on. Victory. You stretch. You bow. You collect your scroll, careful not to bend the corners. Your feet ache. Your neck pops like a rice cracker, and the day isn't even half over. You're still riding the high of a passable grunt when you arrive at the afternoon desk, located in a room somehow even quieter and more intimidating than the last. This one has scrolls stacked like sleeping dragons, bundles tied with faded ribbon, each labeled in tiny, perfect script that whispers, "Don't mess this up." You take a seat beside a lattice window. The sunlight filters through in diagonal bars, catching on the dust motes. Someone sneezes. 3 scribes murmur, "Blessings from the ancestors," almost in unison. Today's task: brush maintenance. Not glamorous, not even remotely exciting, but it's one of those things nobody tells you is crucial until your best writing brush suddenly starts shedding hair mid-scroll, like it's going bald from stress. You roll out your brush mat and line them up. Goat hair, wolf hair, me mixed bristle, and the squirrel brush. Your tutor says you're not spiritually mature enough to wield. Probably for the best. That one bites. You gently wash each brush in a bowl of lukewarm water, squeezing the tips delicately between your fingers. Each strand, each bundle, each knot of wood and thread, it all has to be kept pristine. You whisper apologies to one that fell into your ink yesterday. You hope it forgives you. An older scribe walks past, humming a tune from the Han Dynasty. Or maybe it's just a tune he made up and insists is ancient. You'll never know. He stops and says, "Your wolf brush is frowning." You squint at it. It sort of is. Apparently, brushes have moods. According to your elders, if your brush is too stiff, it's angry. Too soft, it's sulking. And if it wobbles at the start of a character, you've offended a household god. You try not to roll your eyes, but secretly, you adjust your brush's resting angle, just in case. You spend a full hour oiling, combing, and straightening the brushes, then leave them to dry on a clean strip of cloth. There's a moment of calm, almost meditative, a stillness you hadn't realized you needed. And then comes the scroll review. You and 3 other scribes gather in the corner hall, where completed copies from this morning are being examined. A senior official arrives in layered robes the color of over-steeped tea. His brows are so heavy, they deserve their own inkstone. He picks up the first scroll. Silence. His eyes scan. He grunts. He nods. The scribe breathes again. Next scroll. Yours. Your heartbeat stumbles. You suddenly remember every character you doubted, every comma-like flourish you made a little too comma-like. He reads, slowly, one finger following the line. You think of excuses. You imagine fleeing into the mountains and becoming a thatch-roofed hermit with no need for grammar. You fantasize about being reincarnated as a frog. He finishes. He sets it down. He says, "Adequate," which, in this world, is basically applause. You bow deeply, holding it just long enough to seem humble and just short enough not to fall over. When you sit down again, your knees crack like firewood. No one reacts. It's normal. Historians still argue whether scribes in ancient China considered their tools to be extensions of the body, or if the reverence was more symbolic, a form of institutional poetry. What's agreed upon, however, is that your worth as a scribe rose and fell with your brush care. You wrap your tools again with new reverence, tucking each one into its silk cradle. Even the one that leaks gets a little extra attention. Lunch bell chimes. You follow the others down the narrow corridor toward the canteen. A long, low hall with wooden benches and bowls already steaming on the tables. Today's meal: barley porridge, salted greens, and a preserved egg that stares at you like it holds grudges. You sit between 2 scribes mid-debate. Because bamboo paper from Shu province doesn't feather at the edges, one insists. But the humidity warps the grain, says the other. You stir your porridge slowly, nodding like a scholar. You have no idea what they're talking about. They turn to you. "What do you prefer?" one asks. Dry paper, you say, after a long pause. They both nod thoughtfully. One jots down a note. You have no idea if that was brilliant or deeply embarrassing. As you chew your pickled radish, you overhear another group talking about a ghost in the archives. Apparently, if you work too late under the lamplight, your brush will start writing words you didn't think. You pretend not to listen, but you also vow never to work alone in the archives again. Lunch ends. You place your bowl in the water basin, wipe your hands, and stretch your arms. Someone lets out a dramatic sigh. Someone else mimics it, like an opera singer. A few laugh. It's these little moments that stitch the hours together. The glances, the sighs, the quiet camaraderie of surviving another scroll. You head back to your desk, where your brushes are now dry, your ink is still behaving, and your afternoon assignment is waiting. More characters, more precision, less ink splatter. You adjust your robe, roll up your sleeves, dip your brush into the ink, and begin again. Your next task arrives not as a scroll, but as a challenge disguised as a scroll. It's a freshly unrolled government announcement meant for reproduction, an imperial edict about flood repairs in the countryside. A simple message, in theory. But as your eyes move across the lines, you notice something deeply troubling. It's not centered. The original scribe must have been rushed, or perhaps distracted by floodwaters of his own, because the entire document begins its noble proclamation, nearly a thumb's width off to the left. The horror. You look around. Should you mention it? Pretend not to notice. Is it a test? A trap? A cruel trick from someone in the archives? You clear your throat softly. The scribe next to you looks over. Ah, he says, seeing the misalignment. A true test of composure. He nods sagely and returns to his own writing, leaving you alone with your off-kilter scroll and a rising tide of aesthetic distress. You stare at the page. You think of all the training, all the reverence, all the philosophical lectures about balance, symmetry, harmony, and then you're asked to copy this. You consider recentering it in your copy, but you remember the lesson. Scribes do not interpret. Scribes reproduce. You sigh. You begin. Even as your hand performs the motions, your soul quietly weeps. The left-leaning characters taunt you. Every time you try to find your flow, your eye catches on the uneven margin, and your wrist hesitates. You pause and take a breath. Then two. Then sip some lukewarm tea that tastes faintly of ink from the rim of your brush-rinsing bowl. When you start again, you force yourself to embrace it. Maybe this is the lesson. Life isn't always centered. Not every scroll aligns. Sometimes the Emperor's command runs downhill like a flooded paddy field. You write slowly, purposefully. Even as the margin slants, your characters remain disciplined. Halfway through, your hand cramps again. You stretch your fingers under the table, shaking them discreetly. No one is supposed to show strain. It's a mark of inexperience, but you're fairly certain your pinky is staging a small rebellion. You press on. The scribe across the room sneezes. His brush jerks, and a blotch appears on his page. His shoulders sag. No one speaks, but there's a silent moment of mourning. You bow your head for him and resume your own slow torture. By the final line, your concentration is iron. You finish the last character with a flourish so minor it barely qualifies as decorative, but it feels like triumph. You lay the brush down. You bow to the scroll. Then you roll it gently, like wrapping a fragile promise, and slide it into the basket of finished copies. A bell chimes. The early afternoon hour. time for review and corrections, if your luck has soured. Historians still argue whether such small acts like fixing a poorly aligned scroll were ever permitted. Some suggest senior scribes had the discretion to make cosmetic changes, while others claim even a single extra stroke could have meant punishment. What's clear is that most scribes learned, early on, when to obey and when to appear obedient while quietly protecting the elegance of the text. Your instructor lifts your scroll, studies it for an uncomfortable span of time, then looks at you with a puzzled expression. "Perfect copy," he says, but... He raises his brow. "You resisted the urge to fix it." You nod. He smiles. "Well done." You're stunned. Was that praise? You bow, this time slightly deeper. The scribe beside you gives you a subtle thumbs up under the desk. You feel a warm flush of victory that, strangely, tastes like bamboo paper and long, suffering posture. There's a short lull while scrolls are redistributed. Someone is muttering about the absurdity of writing the word for mudslide 47 times. Someone else is flicking bits of dried ink off his sleeve like they're bugs. And then, the senior clerk arrives. He walks slowly, trailing a scroll the size of a festival banner. His sleeves are embroidered with cranes. His sandals make soft, flapping noises against the polished wood. You know him only as the commissioner, a man with the posture of a lamppost and the smile of someone who's read everything you've ever done wrong. He stops at your desk. You bow, deep, slower than usual, just in case. He unfurls a scroll in front of you. It's another reproduction job, but this one is more ceremonial. A seasonal calendar, meant to hang in a local magistrate's hall. That means extra flourishes, decorative brushwork, and absolutely no room for error. You accept the scroll with 2 hands and a politely terrified smile. The commissioner says nothing. He leaves. You unroll the paper. Your eyes narrow. The top third is covered in the calendar's title, written in a script so ornate it might as well be ancient bird tracks. The rest is filled with small, delicate characters about frost dates, harvest moons, and auspicious days for haircutting. You don't even want to know what happens if you get those wrong. You begin again. Brush, ink, breathe, balance. Each season flows under your hand, like a song you almost remember. Autumn comes easily. Spring, a bit harder. Summer requires 3 tea breaks and 1 existential sigh. You dip your brush one final time. You sign your name in the corner. Not your real name, but your scribe tag. A number and a sigil. A way to track quality. A way to measure mistakes. You sit back, rub your fingers, and stare at the scroll. It's still not centered, but it's beautiful. You're feeling confident, perhaps, too confident. The kind of calm that whispers, maybe you've finally got this. That's usually the exact moment fate decides to dunk your head into the ceremonial tea basin. As you step into the outer courtyard, squinting at the sun now filtering through branches like some poetic painting you'll never have time to appreciate, you realize something terrible. You are late. Not disaster late. Not exile late. Just noticeably late. Which, in the civil office, might as well be a war crime. You pick up your pace, nearly knocking into a junior clerk carrying a stack of blank bamboo slips. One falls. You catch it midair. He nods. You nod. No words, only mutual bureaucratic panic. By the time you reach the main building, the wooden screen doors are already pulled wide, and a faint murmuring of documents being read aloud drifts through the air, like incense smoke with a grudge. You slide inside quietly, trying to make yourself as small and scribe-shaped as possible. There's a space at the end of the long desk, always the last to fill, always next to the window that sticks halfway open, perfect for catching drafts and judgmental glances. Your instructor doesn't look up, but you feel the awareness, like his soul has squinted at you. You bow slightly as you unroll your assignment for the hour. 3 identical copies of a trade ledger between 2 nearby counties, both of which are apparently embroiled in a long-standing argument about oxen rental fees. Yes, oxen, rental, fees. You glance over the original document, which includes phrases like, "a party of the first ox," and "fee shall be equal to a cartload of millet." It's a legal labyrinth dressed up as farm talk. Your brush hovers. You begin. At first, it's fine. Your ink behaves. Your wrist is steady. Your characters, those noble pictograms, march dutifully across the page, until, thump, you look up. The commissioner has entered the room, again. This time, he's brought a companion, a scholar official in robes so white they reflect the midday sun like divine armor. His sleeves whisper secrets. His hair is tied with a jade pin you're pretty sure could pay off your entire family's ink debt. The commissioner gestures toward you. Oh no. You pretend not to see it. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe another scribe is being chosen, one who didn't trip on the water bucket last week. But the steps approach, and stop. You slowly look up. "Copyist 12, the commissioner says. "Come." You bow so fast you nearly smack the desk, and follow them into a side chamber. The room smells of parchment, old plum ink, and senior expectations. The jade pin man nods at you and lays a scroll on the low table. It's short, unusually so, and written in crisp, formal characters. "We require this transcribed," he says, without loss of tone. You nod, though you aren't sure what that means. Tone, in this case, is less about pitch and more about implied authority. These are the kinds of characters that can declare festivals or famines. You sit. They watch. You hold your brush. You begin. This is not copying. This is performance. Every downward stroke must assert confidence. Every upward flick must bow in deference. Even your breathing must match the flow of the document. Somewhere behind you, one of the men clears his throat, not in irritation, more like a punctuation mark. You keep going. The characters unfold, like banners in the wind, like fish through reeds, like oxen through poorly defined rental agreements. You finish, slowly, deliberately. You set the brush down and bow. They study your work. The commissioner makes a sound like an approving grunt, trying to remain humble. The jade pin scholar smiles. Barely. "You may return," he says. You bow again, leave the room, and exhale in the hallway, like you've just outrun a stampede. Historians still argue whether scribes under imperial administration truly understood the power of the words they copied, or whether they were mere vessels for communication. Some suggest the more perceptive among them subtly influenced tone and emphasis. Others argue they were bound by too many layers of protocol and fear. You lean against the wooden beam, letting your pulse settle. Your hour is now completely thrown, but no one seems to mind. Perhaps being summoned into the whispering chamber of scrolls, your name for it, not official, comes with invisible immunity for the day. You return to your desk. Someone's borrowed your inkstone. You don't even argue. You just find another and begin again. This time it's market records, tallies of rice bundles, broken carts, and official complaints about the temple bell ringing too early. You find it oddly soothing. You write the phrase, "rice unraveled due to mold," 6 times. It becomes nonsense. It becomes poetry. You don't know how long you sit there, but eventually the bell chimes. Midday break. You rise. Your legs protest. Your spine clicks. Your neck refuses to look left for a bit. You shuffle into the courtyard again, where the other scribes lounge in soft patches of shade, sipping tea from rough ceramic cups. One scribe fans himself with a reed slip, muttering, "The oxen again. They never stop arguing." You sit beside him. "They always argue about oxen," you say. He laughs. You both sip tea. Someone nearby hums a folk tune. Someone else tosses a rice kernel to a crow that's gotten far too comfortable around government buildings. You look up at the sky, a dull blue behind the crisscross of beams and banners, and you think for a moment that you just might make it to the next scroll. You return to the hall, with a little tea still warming your chest, and a growing sense that the worst might be over for the day. But the scribe's life is full of plot twists. At your desk sits a man you've never seen before, broad-shouldered, square-faced, eyes fixed on your scroll, like it owes him money. His robes are not scribe issue. They're official grade, trimmed in deep blue, and lined with something stiff enough to rustle with every tiny movement. In his hand, a brush unused, sharp, expensive. This, you realize, is the commissioner's assistant, also known as the one who watches. He doesn't acknowledge you. He simply gestures to the seat across from him, which is your seat. You bow slightly and sit, trying not to squeak on the lacquered wood. "Copy this," he says, sliding forward a short scroll marked with 2 seals. One red, one black. Red means the contents are imperial. Black means it's under review. Both together mean nerves. You unroll it. It's a tax edict, a new one. And unlike most proclamations, this one hasn't been approved for broad reproduction yet. You're part of the drafting process now, or at least your brush is. You copy it, and the assistant watches. You can feel his breath from across the table. As you dip your brush into the ink, your hand trembles slightly. You steady it against the rim of the dish. Your first character is clean, upright. The second, slightly bold. The third leans to the left, and your brain panics, but your hand doesn't stop. It's muscle memory now. This is what the brush does. It dances, and you follow. About halfway down, you feel a drop of sweat slide behind your ear. It itches. You don't scratch it. You can't scratch it. One twitch, and you risk dragging a rogue mark across provincial grain allocation, which would turn it into something far less appropriate. You resist. The ink glides. The brush listens. The commissioner's assistant watches every stroke. You reach the end. A double-line finish. You set the brush down with both hands, a final gesture of care. You bow your head, briefly. He doesn't speak. Instead, he picks up the scroll and holds it to the light, like he's checking for secret rebellion codes. Then, without a word, he rolls it, ties it with silk cord, and tucks it into his sleeve. He stands. He nods, and he leaves. You remain motionless for 3 full breaths, afraid the table will collapse from the stress you left in it. Then finally, you breathe. Historians still argue whether scribes were ever allowed input in the edicts they copied. Some accounts suggest high-ranking scribes were occasionally invited to advise on phrasing, especially when a word's tone could sway a regional governor's interpretation. But most evidence points to one rule above all. The brush obeys. You lean back and close your eyes for a moment. Someone nearby coughs, and it startles you back into motion. You check the ink. Still fresh. Another scroll lands in front of you, not from above, just from a passing clerk, tossed casually like a loaf of bread. No ceremony, no judgment, just more work. This one is oddly titled, Missing Livestock Report, Southern District. You smile to yourself. You prefer the weird ones. It begins with a complaint from a farmer about 6 missing pigs, and ends with a rebuttal that the pigs were in fact borrowed by a cousin with poor memory. Your job is to preserve this gem for bureaucratic eternity. You savor it. You copy the names. You copy the insults phrases like, as forgetful as a hollow drum, and more straw than brain. You wonder what the pigs think of all this. Then comes a signature. Not yours. The farmer's. Except it's not a signature. It's a thumbprint. Crimson. You blink. Yes. Some reports still come sealed with the petitioner's print in vermilion ink, pressed carefully at the bottom of the page. A mark of sincerity. A statement of truth. You copy the rest with care. No flourishes. No commentary. But in the margins of your mind, you wonder if the pigs were ever returned. The bell tolls again. Evening is creeping up on the courtyard. The light turns golden, slanting long shadows across the stone floor. The scribes around you begin to stretch, mumble, shuffle their feet. Your joints ache. Your eyes burn. You feel an ink smear somewhere behind your left ear. But you're still here. You clean your brush. Slowly, reverently. You murmur to it, like a tired parent tucking in a chaotic child, back in its sleeve, back into the roll. Everything neat. You bow to your desk, a silent thanks, and then you rise. Outside, the wind is cooler now. Lanterns begin to flicker into life one by one, carried by small-footed clerks who light them with long reeds dipped in oil. The air smells of dust, fire, and distant dumplings. As you walk past the central garden, you hear a stringed instrument being plucked, gently, rhythmically, probably by a scholar too tired to argue about ink anymore. You nod at a fellow scribe. He nods back. Your day is not over. Not yet. But this moment, this walk beneath the lanterns, ink behind your ears, brush in your satchel, the faint memory of pigs and oxen and edicts, that at least feels like yours. You're almost back at your quarters, ready to scrub your ink-stained hands and collapse onto your mat, when a runner appears, barefoot, red-faced and out of breath. He stops you with a slight bow, then holds out a scroll, sealed with a bright red wax mark that screams, urgent and bureaucratic. You blink, then sigh. Of course. You follow him back across the courtyard, your feet dragging, your calves whimpering. He leads you not to your usual desk, but to the smaller annex near the legal archives, the one you only hear about when someone's made a mistake, or when someone's about to. Inside, a dim oil lamp flickers beside a tall pile of unfolded bamboo slips, and yet another scroll, already unrolled and waiting for you like a trap with nice penmanship. You read the header, Inventory of Confiscated Goods, Incident 307. Oh no. You've heard whispers about this one. Something about a rice delivery gone wrong. A magistrate's cousin getting too comfortable with warehouse keys, and a very large rat that was either metaphorical or terrifyingly real. Your job? Summarize the investigation and prepare a clean report for the temple clerk, which means you're the final step between bureaucracy and ritual forgiveness. No pressure. You dip your brush in fresh ink. The tip quivers slightly. So do your hands. The first entry lists missing sacks of rice. Dozens of them. The official explanation? Spillage due to clumsy servants. Curious how the spillage lined up neatly with a family wedding in the same district. You keep reading. There are witness statements, some anonymous, some vaguely poetic. One reads, "The rice flew like doves at dusk." You pause. Is that metaphor? Are doves involved? You decide not to ask. You begin the summary. You condense 5 rambling statements, 3 contradictory waits, and 1 incident involving a tipped cart and a goat into a single paragraph of gentle, diplomatic phrasing. Your ink dances through phrases like, discrepancies noted between reported and received quantities, and further investigation may be warranted, pending lunar cycle calendar adjustments. You are, essentially, writing a polite shrug. Historians still argue whether scribes like you actually influenced outcomes in cases like these, or merely recorded events as directed. Some suggest a skilled scribe could shape an entire investigation through tone alone. Others believe your kind simply buffered the chaos with polite brushstrokes. You decide to believe the first one. It helps you sleep at night. You finish the final line. All items not accounted for should be blessed and recorded as losses, which is the nicest way to say, this rice is gone forever, and so is your cousin's honesty. You roll the scroll carefully, seal it with the red wax stamp from the drawer, and tuck it into the outgoing basket. You glance up. The runner is already gone. Typical. Your hands ache again. You look at your fingers, stained faintly blue-black. The ink has soaked into your fingerprints, into the soft skin along your knuckles, into your sleeves. You wonder if there's any part of you not partially made of ink by now. You close your eyes for a second. Just a second. When you open them, someone else is in the room. It's the archive keeper, a hunched old man, who smells like paper and silent judgment. He nods at your work, mutters something that might be approval, and takes the scroll with him. His sleeves swish like tired wings. You bow as he leaves, then you groan, softly. Time to stand. Again. Outside, the sun is nearly gone. The clouds have turned orange and purple, and the air is cooler, touched by the distant river breeze. Somewhere in the distance, someone bangs a gong. Not the ceremonial one, the dinner one. You perk up. Food. Real food. You follow the scent of steamed dumplings and grilled scallions across the gravel path. The dining hall is already buzzing low murmurs, clinking bowls, the occasional slurp. You squeeze in at the end of a bench beside 2 young scribes, arguing over the most efficient character for embezzlement. You smile. You reach for a bowl of soup, still steaming, and let the warmth sink into your fingertips. Across from you, someone lifts a slice of turnip with chopsticks and mutters, "Rice doesn't just vanish, you know." You nod. It flies like doves at dusk. The table laughs. You laugh too. It feels good. You finish your bowl and lean back slightly. The night is coming, and the lamps are being lit. Paper lanterns sway gently overhead, casting long shadows across the courtyard like sleepy brushstrokes. You look up and see a bat flicker past the eaves. Even the bats are working overtime. You sigh, then you stand, because there's still one more scroll waiting. There always is. The moment you return to your work area, a strange silence meets you. Not total silence. This isn't a temple, but that particular kind of quiet that hangs over a room where something has gone oddly, suspiciously wrong. At your desk, 2 scribes are kneeling. One is inspecting the floor with the intensity of a detective. The other is poking around under the table, occasionally muttering, It has to be here. You clear your throat. Should I be concerned? They look up. One scribe's face twists into a sheepish grimace. The seal is missing. You blink. Seal? The small jade verification seal for the Rice case report, the other one whispers, eyes wide. It was just here. Gone now. You stare at your desk. You remember sealing that scroll. Wax. Stamp. Done. You're sure of it. Mostly sure. Okay. 83% sure. Someone has already fetched the assistant archivist, who arrives like a minor thundercloud in hemp sandals. He demands the last 5 scrolls logged under your number. They're retrieved, carefully unrolled, and inspected like priceless tapestries only, to reveal that one of them, indeed, has no seal. The Rice scandal summary. Of course, you want to melt into the floor. This is not just a stamp, the archivist intones. It is verification of clerical chain of command. Misplacing one is like losing a piece of your uniform, or your name. You nod solemnly, trying not to appear like someone internally panicking about demotion, dishonor, or being reassigned to latrine tally duty. A low-level search begins. Parchments are lifted, inkstones moved. Even the cracks between floorboards are poked with chopsticks. Somewhere in the back, a novice sneezes and is glared into silence. Finally, someone says, "Check the cushion." You freeze, because yes, after you sealed that scroll, you did sit back down, and maybe, just maybe, dropped the small, round, flat jade seal into your lap. You lift the cushion. There it is, staring back at you, smug. You lift it with both hands and hold it aloft like it's a sacred relic. You don't speak. You just present it. The archivist says nothing, just exhales through his nose and walks away, muttering something about the youth of today, even though you're fairly certain he's only 6 years older than you. The scribes beside you give you a slow, sarcastic clap. You bow deeply and say, "Seal recovered. No pigs involved." They chuckle. The tension breaks. The room breathes again. Historians still argue whether such mishaps were forgiven or meticulously recorded. Some believe minor mistakes were quietly overlooked in exchange for long hours and few complaints. Others insist every blot, every missing mark, went into some hidden logbook of failures. You just hope your name isn't in that book tonight. The moment passes, and the scroll is resealed under official supervision. You're not allowed to stamp it yourself this time. Fair enough. Once that's resolved, you finally sit back down and take a long sip of tepid barley tea, which somehow tastes exactly like shame and second chances. Your next task arrives by way of a bored-looking page boy who tosses a small scroll onto your desk and says, "Urgent, but not that urgent." Reassuring. The scroll concerns a new registry of government livestock, specifically how many oxen are available for public works projects during flood season. Yes, we're back to oxen. You unfurl it and sigh. The ink is faded. The handwriting is erratic. Some of the numbers don't add up, and someone, for reasons unclear, has drawn a tiny caricature of an ox wearing a hat in the margins. You blink, then smile. You set to work. As you write, the ox with the hat seems to judge you gently from the side of the page. You consider adding a bow tie, but resist the urge. Doodling is for students. You are a serious government functionary. You finish the transcription and add a small note. Original document contains artistic embellishment not relevant to inventory totals. You lean back. Outside, night has fully arrived. Crickets chirp from the garden. A light breeze stirs the paper strips tied to the prayer tree. You stretch your arms, back, and neck all at once, a symphony of cracking joints. And just as you're about to pack away your tools for the night, another figure appears at the door. It's the commissioner. Again. This time, he doesn't speak. He just gives you a long, level look, then sets a wrapped bundle on your desk. You hesitate, then unwrap it. Inside, a brand new ink brush, its bristles sleek, tied with red thread at the base. A quiet honor, a quiet message. You look up, but he's already gone. You bow to the empty doorway. Then, you wrap the brush again, carefully, and place it beside your old one, which has done enough weeping for one day. Your reward for surviving the Great Seal fiasco is lunch. Well, technically, it's late lunch, dangerously close to early supper. But to a scribe, time bends around scrolls and ink anyway. You step into the refectory with the cautious gait of someone who knows benches might collapse, soup might spill, and opinions might flare louder than firecrackers at a festival. Today's menu: steamed buns, pickled radish, boiled greens, and rice. Always rice. The culinary theme here seems to be minimal flavor, maximal starch. You claim a spot at a long, low table where 3 other scribes are already seated. One's humming a song about tax forms. Yes, really. While another is enthusiastically stabbing at his bun, as though it once insulted his lineage. The 3rd scribe glances at you with the bleary eyes of someone who's copied too many legal declarations without blinking. You heard about the debate? You pause with your bowl halfway to your lips. What debate? Paper grain, he mutters. Again. You groan. Not this, but it's already begun. At the far end of the room, 2 senior scribes are standing by the window, each holding up a sheet of bamboo paper. One is declaring, in increasingly animated tones, that vertical grain allows for cleaner stroke endings. The other insists that horizontal grain provides better ink absorption during rapid brushwork. You slurp your soup. The discussion builds. A few younger scribes get involved. Someone pulls out a magnifying glass. Someone else mentions the Imperial Archives in Chang'an. Voices rise. Gestures sharpen. One bun is accidentally flung, causing a brief hush and then laughter. It's fine. Mostly. You munch quietly, trying to keep a low profile, until someone turns to you and asks, "What do you prefer?" You blink, stalled mid-bite. "Well," you say slowly, "I prefer grain that doesn't tear when I breathe on it." There's a beat. Then, to your relief, the table erupts in appreciative snorts and nods. You're safe for now. Historians still argue whether paper grain alignment ever truly affected scribal efficiency. Some records suggest elaborate studies were conducted on absorbency versus accuracy. Others argue it was mostly the kind of argument scribes enjoyed when rice was scarce, and politics were forbidden. You finish your meal in peace. Almost. Just as you're tipping the last of your barley tea into your mouth, a whisper floats down the table. "Did you hear?" The temple fire inspector's report came back. You pause. This is not gossip. This is practically sacred lore. The Temple of Writings, where all sacred and legal scrolls are archived, suffered minor smoke damage last month from a lantern left too close to the poetry section. No scrolls were lost, but the report on the incident has become legendary for its passive-aggressive tone and detailed diagrams. You feel your ears perk up. According to the whispering scribe, the inspector claimed the scroll shelf exhibited excessive smugness in its elevation and recommended reducing all future shelves by half a chai. You blink. You want to read that report. Desperately. But alas, it is housed in the senior archives off-limits to lowly mid-tier scribes who once misplaced a jade seal. You sigh and accept your rank. After clearing your bowl, you step back into the corridor. The air smells of old wood and warm ink. Somewhere nearby, someone is chanting multiplication tables to a very patient turtle. You decide to stretch your legs. The compound's inner garden is quiet at this hour. A crooked plum tree leans over a small koi pond where the fish are either napping or dramatically bored. You sit beneath the tree, brush still tucked into your sash, and let your eyes rest. It's a rare thing, this silence. Even scribes surrounded by words sometimes crave none at all. You watch a koi flick its tail and ponder nothing in particular. Then suddenly, footsteps. It's the archivist again. He doesn't see you right away. He's muttering to himself, holding a clay tablet and occasionally shaking it, like it might confess to an error. Then he spots you. Ah, copyist 12. You stand, bow. He sighs. Do you have a moment? The answer, of course, is always yes. He hands you the clay tablet. It's stamped with early Han Dynasty script neatly incised lines, faded from handling, with the unmistakable earthy scent of riverbed clay. We're missing the bamboo transcription, he says. Original was lost in a rain leak. This is the backup. Make it clean. Make it quick. You nod. You take it back to your desk. You sit. You begin. There's something grounding about this work. Something that draws a line, literally and metaphorically, between the chaos of the world and the order of brush and parchment. Every character you write is a bridge, a translation, a promise. By the time you finish the transcription, the sky is dimming again. The last of the afternoon light paints gold stripes across the floor. Your fingers are stiff, but your mind is oddly calm. You roll the scroll, secure it, and label it in your neatest hand. Then you stretch again. One more scroll done. One step closer to bedtime. Or at least, to tea, and maybe a foot soak. You deserve that much. The moment you think you're done for the evening, your name echoes down the corridor, called by someone with far too much authority and far too little sense of timing. You stop mid-stretch, shoulders groaning, and slowly turn. It's the evening supervisor, scroll in hand, expression neutral in that bureaucratic way that could mean either urgent task or your desk is on fire. He hands you the scroll. Summarize. Neatly. Avoid unnecessary poetry. You nod solemnly, as if you weren't mentally preparing to write something haiku adjacent just for fun. The seal on the scroll is unfamiliar, marked with a grain motif and the faint stamp of a temple ledger clerk. You unroll it. It's a corruption memo. Of course. The culprit, a local warehouse overseer, accused of accepting bribes in the form of scented oils and embroidered slippers, luxury items. Not exactly the black market extravagance you expected. You begin reading. Apparently, he was supposed to oversee the storage of rice, sent from regional fields to the city. But someone noticed the warehouse was always oddly short during inspections, and always oddly fragrant. There are accounts from warehouse staff, temple accountants, and one irate delivery ox handler who mentions perfumed footprints in the grain piles. You resist the urge to giggle. Still, you summarize. You don't just copy, you translate. Bureaucracy into brushstrokes, gossip into order, chaos into a scroll that someone can read without sighing loudly halfway through. You phrase it carefully. Discrepancies in storage totals coincide with reports of non-standard compensation practices. Further review advised. Polite, neutral, slightly pointed. You conclude with a respectful recommendation. Review of temple storage protocols may reduce future misunderstanding and perfumed contamination. You seal it, label it, and place it in the outgoing tray with reverent finality. Historians still argue whether such petty corruption was widespread or merely over-documented. Some believe scribes inflated reports to justify their own importance. Others argue the obsession with minute details was what held the empire together. Personally, you think, if someone can embezzle with sandals and sandalwood oil, they've earned at least a footnote. You lean back in your chair and allow yourself, finally, a moment to just exist. And then something unexpected happens. The teacher arrives. He's ancient, not metaphorically, actual years. His beard is long enough to need its own inkstone. He enters with the silent shuffle of someone who's forgotten more characters than you'll ever learn. He gestures for you to follow him. You panics very briefly, but he doesn't take you to the punishment bench or the record corrections desk. Instead, he walks you to the calligraphy room. And there, under flickering lanterns, he places a blank scroll in front of you. "Write," he says. You blink. "Right. What?" He shrugs. "Something clean. Something beautiful. Something without a tax form in it." You sit. You hold the brush knot as a tool, but as a part of your own breath. The parchment waits, unjudging. You begin with a poem. Nothing fancy. Just a quiet verse about late rice harvests and tired feet. You write slowly, deliberately. You focus on the curve of each stroke, the balance of each form. No one is watching. No one will grade this. It's for you. Your brush glides with surprising steadiness. You finish the verse, then sign it with your usual seal, a small circle marked with the character for dust, because that's what paper is in the end. Dust that remembers. The teacher nods, says nothing. Then he takes your scroll and adds it to a small pile of other student works, private reflections, little acts of quiet, scribal rebellion. He bows. You bow lower, and then he's gone again, swallowed by the lantern glow and the hum of crickets outside. You return to your desk. Lighter somehow. You open the drawer and find a small preserved plum someone left there, wrinkled, tart, dusted with sugar. A gift? A coincidence? You eat it anyway. Its flavor is sharp, perfect, and fleeting. You sit there for a while, chewing thoughtfully, letting the taste root you in the moment. The room is mostly empty now. Just a few night scribes murmuring over their final assignments, brushes being cleaned, ink being capped, sleep being negotiated one page at a time. You tidy your workspace, not because anyone will check, but because order makes rest easier. You roll your shoulders again, slower now. The scrolls are done for today. Your fingers are stained. Your back is sore, but your mind is quiet. Outside, the wind has picked up. Bamboo chimes clack softly in the courtyard. A distant gong signals the 9th hour. You rise. You take one last look at your brush, old, loyal, still slightly frayed. Then you tuck it into your sash and head toward your quarters. Maybe, if you're lucky, your reed mat hasn't developed a new lump. Just as you're halfway to your room, practically fantasizing about lying down and not being responsible for anyone else's grain, ox, or poetic misstep, you hear your name again. This time, it's from a breathless novice with wild eyes and a scroll held like it might explode. "You're needed," he gasps. "Now." You blink. "Is it on fire?" He shakes his head. "Worse. It's the wrong scroll. You follow him at an increasingly unhurried pace. Your limbs are rebelling by now, until you arrive at the records review hall, where 3 scribes and a rather alarmed assistant commissioner are hovering around a long table. One scroll lies open. Your scroll. The rice embezzlement summary. Except it's not. It's a military dispatch from a border fort about troop movements and grain supply lines. Very much not something you were supposed to touch, let alone summarize with witty subtext and sly phrases about perfumed footprints. Your mouth goes dry. How? The commissioner says very quietly. Did the report on internal corruption get swapped with this? You look at the table. You look at your fingers. You consider blaming ghosts. Instead, you say, possibly mislabeled scroll sleeves? He frowns. That would mean someone checks the scroll bin. Sure enough, there it is. The Rice Scandal Report, tucked neatly into a sleeve labeled Logistics Dispatch, Northern Outpost. You both sigh. At the same time, the commissioner pinches the bridge of his nose. This could have been awkward. Diplomatically disastrous, mutters a clerk. You nod solemnly, then ask, but it didn't go anywhere, right? No, says the assistant, because we don't send dispatches at night. Small mercies. You are, very briefly, mistaken for a spy, or a saboteur, or someone who's had too much barley tea and not enough sleep. After a tense 5 minutes, and a verification of your usual handwriting samples, the mood shifts from suspicion to exhaustion. The commissioner waves a tired hand. Fix it, he mutters. Correct sleeves, proper seals, and for heaven's sake, use the red wax this time. You bow. Yes, sir. Historians still argue whether scribes ever intentionally swapped scrolls to send subtle messages or leak political concerns. Some believe errors were always innocent, the result of fatigue and crowded script rooms. Others whisper of scribes who shaped history with a few accidental swaps. You'd prefer to be in the innocent group, or at least the got away with it category. Once the scrolls are returned to their proper identities, sealed, and safely reshelved, you're allowed to leave. You don't wait for a second invitation. Back in your quarters, the door creaks like an old storyteller. You step inside and collapse literally onto your mat. Your bones make a sound. You're not sure which one, but it felt meaningful. It's dark now, but not quiet. You can hear the frogs from the garden, the soft rhythm of feet pacing the corridor. A distant scribe coughing like he's part of a haunted scroll performance. You stare at the ceiling. Then something thumps beside your pillow. You sit up. A reed basket. You open it. Inside, a folded robe, pale gray, freshly laundered, with a little slip of paper tucked into the folds. One character. Endurance. No signature. You smile. Someone saw you today. Not just the ink blots and scroll swaps, but you. You tuck the note under your mat and fold the robe over your arm like it's a badge of honor, which, in a way, it is. You change into it. It smells like clean wind and slightly burnt soap root. You lie down again. You almost drift off. And then, tap, tap. You open one eye, a novice at the door. He whispers, "One last scroll. Urgent." You consider ignoring him, but you're a scribe. You sigh, sit up, take the scroll. You hold it under the lantern and read the header. Night Census of Senior Archivist's Sleeping Preferences. Part 1. You squint. Is this real? There's a note at the bottom. Please ensure discretion and legibility. Final report due before rooster crow. You stare at it, and you laugh, soft, incredulous, a little mad. Because of course there's a census about sleeping positions. Of course there is. This is your life now. You find your brush, still sticky with ink. You begin, because you're a scribe, and scribes write what must be written, even if it's a scroll about how Master Joe snores only on Tuesdays. At this point, your sense of time has completely unraveled. The candle stub by your desk is shorter than your thumb. Your neck feels like it's been rolled across a calligraphy block, and your ink brush is held together with hope and stubbornness. But you finish the absurd archivist sleep census scroll anyway, complete with tactful phrasing like, prefers open window, northern breeze, and dislikes bell chimes after third watch. You even add a small diagram showing the distribution of sleeping mats by seniority. It's decorative. It's possibly unnecessary. It's possibly brilliant. As you tie the scroll and place it on the tray, your hand sticks slightly. Humidity. Rain is coming. Sure enough, a distant roll of thunder grumbles over the tiled rooftops. Outside, wind rustles through paper lanterns, and someone bolts across the courtyard, holding scrolls under their robes, like a hen shielding her eggs. You step out into the hallway, only to be met with the full embrace of summer monsoon air. Thick, warm, and aggressively moist. You could practically drink it if you stood still with your mouth open. You head toward the side archive building, tasked now with labeling backup copies of tax receipts. Clearly, the reward for your earlier brilliance is more receipts. Inside, the room is lit by candles that flicker every time the wind shoves its way in through the window slats. The walls are lined with cubbyholes, each stuffed with scrolls labeled by year, topic, and often questionable handwriting. You take your assigned copies and begin writing. Ink, roll, label. Ink, roll, label. But the moisture is not your friend. Each character bleeds slightly into the fibers of the page. You adjust your ink. Lighter mix. Drier brush. Still, the scroll edges curl as if shy about being read. You lay down weighted sticks-thin bamboo slats along the top and bottom, but even they shift when the next gust blows through. You mutter something unscribe-like under your breath and wipe your brow. Historians still argue whether rainy season records were ever secretly reduced to half-length just to save the effort. Some say special ink blends were developed for humid nights. Others believe scribes simply suffered in silence, forming support groups over vinegar tea and mutual complaints. You believe all three options are likely true. To distract yourself, you peer at a nearby scroll from the festival records section. It details the inventory of lanterns for the Mid-Autumn celebration and notes that last year, a fox climbed the storage rack and caused a small panic. The phrase fox-induced pyrotechnics is underlined in red ink. You chuckle. Back to work. Eventually, you finish labeling the set. Your fingers ache from the cramped grip, and your lower back has filed a formal complaint. You blow gently across the drying pages, not too hard, or they'll curl more, and place them in the drying rack, praying the roof doesn't leak again. Then comes the real trial, transporting them back across the open courtyard. You bundle the scrolls in oilcloth, tuck them into a woven satchel, and make a dash for it. The rain hits just as you step outside. It's not dramatic or poetic. It's just wet and rude. The satchel slaps against your side as you hustle. Your sandals squelch. Your robe tries to become a ship's sail. One unlucky scroll pokes out and gives you a little scroll paper slap as punishment. You reach the next building, panting and dripping, to find two novices trying to plug a roof leak with bundled straw and frantic prayers. Inside, a few candles still flicker. You place the satchel down and inspect the scrolls. Still dry. A miracle. You exhale and lean against the wall. Rain drums the tiles above, soft and steady now. Then someone hands you a towel. Scratchy. Damp, but heartfelt. You nod in gratitude. Someone else passes you a shallow bowl of warm millet porridge. Salty. Bland. Comforting. You eat it crouched by the door, watching the rain. No one speaks. Even the novices stop fidgeting for a moment. It's just you, the storm, and the smell of wet wood and ink. And then, thunder cracks. Loud, immediate. A candle falls. A novice shrieks. A stack of scrolls tumbles like startled chickens. You leap into action because reflexes, apparently. Scrolls are caught mid-roll. Inkpots are rescued. A single unlucky reed mat catches fire for about 1 second before someone dumps a water jug on it. When the chaos settles, everyone stares at you. You're standing in the middle of the room, scroll in one hand, water jug in the other, hair plastered to your face like a disgraced poet. You nod, as dignified as one can be in soaked linen. The supervisor mumbles, "Well, that could have been worse." You smile. Could have been much worse. You trudge back through the puddled stone path behind the archive wing. Scroll-carrying duty's done for now. And just when you think it's safe to contemplate sleep, the assistant archivist calls your name again. His lantern swings in the dark, like a sleepy firefly. "You're on temple records tonight." You squint. "Didn't I do temple records last week?" He snorts. "And you'll do them next week, too, if Elder Shu keeps misplacing his glasses." So off you go, guided by the soft glow of oil lamps and the fainter glow of sheer resignation. The temple annex is older than the main scriptorium. The floorboards creak, like they have something to confess, and the walls lean in, as if eavesdropping. You duck under a too-low beam and enter a narrow room lit only by a few sad candles and the faint shimmer of moonlight through slatted shutters. Here, records are stored in layered bundles of silk and sealed bamboo tubes, with each ledger meticulously cataloging daily offerings, festival expenses, dream interpretations, and the occasional report of unsettling incense behavior. Tonight's task: cross-check a week's worth of donation records against their matching dream reports. Yes, really. You sit at a long, lacquered desk that has seen more complaints than you've written in your lifetime. Before you lies a ledger wrapped in faded green silk. You open it carefully. Each page is a delicate dance of brushwork and tiny notations. Your first entry: donor, Liu Jingshen. Offering: 2 candied gourds and a bolt of indigo silk. Dream: a goose, holding a lantern, whispered, "Beware the quiet pond." You raise an eyebrow. Your matching report simply says, "No unusual pond activity recorded." Check. Next entry: donor, Master Wen. Offering: 10 coppers. Dream: a fish reciting tax codes. This one's flagged. There's a faint annotation in the margin. Fish possibly misinterpreted. Scholar suspected to have fallen asleep while transcribing code. You smile. Historians still argue whether these dream records held serious religious significance, or simply reflected late-night indigestion and too much fermented tea. Some temples treated them as omens, others as a mildly profitable form of entertainment. You suspect the truth lies somewhere between celestial guidance and snack-induced fever dreams. You continue cross-referencing. Hours slip by. Your candle gutters, and you replace it with another stub. Shadows lengthen and begin to merge. Your brush scratches gently across the page as you note, no discrepancies found. Donor's dream deemed symbolic. At some point, the temperature drops. You pull your robe tighter, rub your hands, and look up. That's when you notice the ledger labeled Restricted, Eyes Only, Elder Shu. It's off limits, which is why, of course, you immediately reach for it. You hesitate. You're not proud of yourself, but curiosity has always been the true ruler of scribes, hasn't it? You open the scroll just a crack. The title, Record of Whispered Offerings. That's already weird. You read the first line. Donor refused to identify. Left goose feather, black inkstone, and a poem wrapped in hair. You close the scroll immediately. Nope, that's someone else's story. You go back to your own stack and finish logging the last entries, each one just a little stranger than the last. One woman dreamed of being scolded by a carp. Another dreamed she became a zither string. One man claimed the temple bell winked at him. You wonder what it says about you that none of this feels particularly odd anymore. When you finally rise from your seat, it's past midnight. The temple annex creaks and sighs, like it's been holding its breath. You carry the completed ledger back to the archive vault, a stone room cooled by thick walls and guarded by 2 ceramic lions, who seem perpetually unimpressed by your existence. Inside, you place the ledger in its proper cubby, bow slightly, just in case, and make your way back out. The rain has stopped. The air smells like wet moss and old ink. You step onto the covered walkway and begin the long, quiet journey back to your room. As you pass the main prayer hall, you hear the faint sound of someone chanting under their breath. A monk, perhaps, or just another sleepless soul trying to untangle the world one syllable at a time. You pause. Listen. Let the sound settle over you like a blanket. Then you keep walking. Your legs ache. Your eyelids flutter. But your mind is surprisingly at peace. The ink is dry. The scrolls are safe. And the goose dreams have been properly logged. You have done your job. And for a scribe in ancient China, that's no small thing. The morning doesn't wait for your permission. Before your dreams can fully unravel into rest, the clang of a temple bell slices through the night air like a very judgmental spoon. It's not even the dignified, deep kind of bell chime you'd expect from a philosophical society of record keepers. No, this bell clangs like someone's dropped a cooking pot from a second story. You sit up. Your spine protests. Your arms feel like reeds, left too long in the rain limp and vaguely resentful. You blink at the light seeping through the window lattice. Pale gray. That pre-dawn hour when time hasn't made up its mind yet. You dress by instinct. Robe, sash, brush, the usual trio. Outside, the courtyard smells like yesterday's ink and today's cold rice porridge. A few scribes are already hunched under eaves, muttering over scrolls and sipping what you suspect is reheated tea, boiled to the consistency of regret. You follow the quiet murmurs toward the front pavilion. The exam board is being posted. Yes, that exam. You remember it now. The one you were volunteered for. The one with the deeply existential questions like, define virtue in no more than 16 couplets. The results are inked on a single vertical scroll, pinned to a wooden board by the most tired-looking clerk in the empire. A small crowd has gathered, shifting in their sandals, eyes scanning quickly, desperately, as if the characters might vanish if not read fast enough. You edge closer. Next to you, someone gasps. Another exhales like they've been holding it for 3 days. A third mumbles a prayer, and then walks away silently. You spot your name. Middle column. Lower than you hoped. Higher than you feared. Acceptable. You step back. Behind you, a scholar collapses to his knees. You're not sure if it's from joy, despair, or a particularly aggressive stomach cramp. Another clutches a bamboo slip, repeating, "Next year, next year," like it's a magical chant. You watch the whole drama unfold with the distant calm of someone who has seen too much ink this week to emotionally invest in rankings. Historians still argue whether these exam results determined one's destiny entirely or simply funneled scribes into different lanes of bureaucratic suffering. Some scholars became magistrates, others became memoirists. A few became famous hermits with suspiciously good handwriting. You, for today, remain you. A scribe, unranked perhaps, but not unread. You return to your quarters to find a scroll waiting for you. No seal, just a single sentence written in crimson ink. You are requested for afternoon brush duty in the children's calligraphy hall. You stare at it. This could mean two things: punishment or honor. In ancient China, sometimes they were the same thing. Brush duty with children means splattered ink, poorly recited idioms, and someone inevitably eating part of a reed pen. Still, you go, because scribes go. The calligraphy hall is airy and bright, full of low tables and tiny cushions. The students are already there, ranging from fiercely determined 6-year-olds to teenagers who radiate philosophical ennui. You're handed a bundle of fresh brushes and a smile that says, "Good luck surviving." The lesson begins. First, you demonstrate the proper grip. A few students nod. One is already attempting to sword fight with his brush. Then comes the ink. They mix too much water, then too little. Someone spills it entirely into their sleeve. A girl in the corner starts painting a tiger instead of practicing radicals. You don't stop her. It's the best tiger you've seen all day. You correct posture, nudge wrists, and murmur patient encouragements like, "That's almost a mountain character. Just tilt it a bit less, like falling bamboo." Someone sneezes on their page. Someone else eats their wax seal. Standard. By midday, your robe is polka-dotted with ink. Your voice is hoarse, but one student has written a nearly perfect 4-character proverb. You tap the parchment lightly and say, "Frame that." They beam. You beam back. You clean the brushes carefully afterward. Each one deserves respect, even the frayed, overly chewed ones. Back in the hallway, a fellow scribe raises an eyebrow at your ink-stained sleeves and tired grin. "War wounds?" he asks. You nod. "Calligraphy class." He winces. Brutal. Then he hands you a candied plum. You eat it slowly, savoring the tart, sweet burst, letting your shoulders drop and your breath settle. The sun shifts lower. Lanterns begin to glow from open windows. The day is winding down. You've survived exam results, emotional scholars, artistic children, and your own relentless expectations. You walk back to your room with the quiet knowledge that you're a thread in a vast tapestry, often overlooked, but always holding the design together. You sit on the edge of your mat, brush resting in your lap, staring at the last blank scroll of the day. It's unrolled, expectant, whispering silently for your attention. Your fingers hesitate above it, not out of fear or fatigue, though you have plenty of both, but because, oddly, this moment feels still. There's no assignment, no seal to press, no commissioner breathing behind your ear. Just you, a quiet room, and one scroll waiting to be filled with whatever remains in your head After this day of chaos, fish dreams, and runaway ink. So, you write. You dip the brush gently, lovingly into the cooled ink. You let your breath guide your hand. And you write not for a magistrate or a tax collector, or even posterity, but for yourself. A poem, a short one. Something about rain and silence and the sound of rice crackling as it cools in a bowl. You don't even sign it. You just let it dry on the sill while you begin to fold your robes for the night. Outside, you hear the sweep of a broom against stone. A cat yowls in the alley. Someone drops a ceramic cup and curses quietly in that "I hope no one noticed" tone. It's life, still gently unfolding even as the candles shrink lower. You stretch once, twice, then lie down. Finally, the mat is thin, yes, and your back feels every splinter of bamboo through the woven cover. But there's something familiar about it now, like it knows your shape, like it has accepted you as one of its own. The night breeze moves through the shutters with soft insistence, fluttering the edge of your robe. And now, as the temple bell marks the final watch of the night, your mind begins to drift. First, through the corridors, then over scrolls, then past the inkstone, the brush rack, and that poor seal you nearly lost under a cushion. Your final waking thought? Maybe tomorrow, you'll finally write your own name in a scroll. Just once, to see how it feels. And then sleep, deep and dreamless. Now, the ink has dried. The scrolls are stacked. The candle has flickered down to its base, and even the cat outside has curled into its corner, sighing the long breath of someone who knows they won the day by doing absolutely nothing. You, scribe of midnight trials and misfiled dispatches, can finally let go. Let the rhythms of the ancient hall fade from your thoughts, the footsteps echoing across bamboo floors, the rustle of parchment, the whispered riddles of dreams and temple bells. Let the laughter of children writing crooked proverbs fall away into the soft hush of a courtyard at peace. Your shoulders grow heavier, your hands slower, your breath deeper. You have served ink and memory, endured rain and reed splinters, and honored every errant goose and accidental tax summary with quiet grace. Let your thoughts slow to the pace of dripping wax, of drifting leaves in temple ponds, of brush strokes across silk. There is nothing more to fix, no scroll left unrolled, no misaligned character waiting to be corrected. You have done enough. Let the cool night air slip under your thoughts like a lullaby, and the hum of distant chants wrap around you like silk. Rest now, historian of forgotten details. You are exactly where you need to be. Sweet dreams.